Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Mark Szewski at Revizto. You are attending our webinar that we're going to be talking about applying Revizto to current and future projects. And really what we're going to try to do is talk about how Revizto applies to the projects you guys have currently and how it applies to future projects. I think there's common questions of, where do we use Revizto in regards to Navisworks and Revit, and when do we use which application, and how can we really apply this quickly and easily to the projects we are currently doing. Joining me today is going to be Chad over at Barton Malow. Chad is the virtual construction manager. Don is also joining us. He is also the senior virtual director of construction and BIM coordinator at Robins Morton. Myself at Revizto, and my counterpart down south, Curtis Morgan at Revizto. I'm going to kick it off by starting with Chad. Chad, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Chad and I met probably about a year ago now, and maybe Chad, if you want to start off kind of how you heard about Revizto and really how you started to apply it, to your first projects, and really how did you start getting into the entire Revizto workflow? Sure.
So I believe that we kind of stumbled upon Revizto when we were looking for something to be able to show higher quality graphics and things for marketing purposes, for business development and things like that. So, Revizto kind of came up on our page, and we started looking at it and started utilizing it for those purposes, for marketing and things. So some of the first things that we did were to take models and start doing site logistics and start doing, to get a better idea of what projects would look like, and tying that into the Oculus. So one of the big things for us was to actually utilize this for showing the clients what things would look like. So for example, I've got a project that I'm not able to actually show you, and I apologize for that. A lot of the projects I'm working on right now have confidentiality agreements that I can't show you exactly what we've done. But let me get one open here that I can show you. And
yeah. And Chad, are you able to talk? Are you able to tell what the project is? I know we can't show the actual project model, but are you able to tell the project name?
So the one that I'm talking about right now is the University of Notre Dame. It's a campus crossroads project. One of the things that, like I said, I was doing was trying to get. I don't know. Are you guys able to see my screen right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you see the University of Virginia. So what I did for the University of Notre Dame was they were trying to understand. I don't know if anybody knows a lot about it, but we're building 3 buildings around the arena, around the football stadium, and with that comes, home football games that we had to work around. So our construction site would kind of fluctuate between this large, multi-acre job site to being real tight. The fence lines had to be snugged right up against the buildings, and we had to be able to, turn the campus back over to the university and have home football games go off without a hitch, as if nothing was going on around campus. So one of the hurdles was that we still had to do, construction during the week. So tearing down a crane, dismantling it, moving it off site, and then bringing it back and reassembling it for, 2 days worth of work just didn't seem very viable. So we had to plan and actually figure out a place for that crane to sit, and for where the NBC trucks would be parked, and various different other things. So to kind of bring all that together, what I did was I put everything into Sketchup, built models that I needed to build, laid everything out, and then I actually took that, put it into Revizto, and then used it to view it in the Oculus Rift so that people could get an actual feel for what things were going to look like on the job site, on a game day, on turnover day. So that was one of the things that I used it for initially. Then we moved into doing some proposals and stuff. And if you're able to see the University of Virginia on my screen, right, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is another project that we actually utilized this Revizto on, and that was so that we could actually show the client what we were proposing for a dorm renovation. So kind of in the same sense, we built this model. I built it off of PDFs in Revit because that's really all that we were provided. Built it all in Revit, and then I took it into Sketchup to pretty it up, so to speak, add some wood materials and things like that. Then kicked it out into Revizto, which is where you see it now. Added some lighting in SketchUp that allowed me to be able to control those inside here in Revizto. The cool thing that I found is that if you make something a light fixture in Revit, SketchUp, whatever your software might be, and then you bring it in here, you can actually control the lighting in here, which is really cool. I didn't know that until Mark actually showed it to me, and trying to remember, it's been a while since I've actually been in this, but you can actually control how these lights actually function and all kinds of cool stuff. So it allowed us to be able to, and I apologize, it's dark. I made some changes since I did the last presentation, but it allowed us to be able to show the client what this thing was going to look like, that we were proposing. And I passed it on to somebody else because I was actually doing this work for someone else. They actually took it into the RIF. We had some technical difficulties based on the RIF and that kind of thing. It had nothing to do with Revizto. And then he actually took this out into an augmented reality type environment and actually attached a target to it and was able to hold his iPad over the target, and this model was, the client was able to touch and feel this model and spin it around, all kinds of stuff. So, it seems like we use a lot of softwares, and we actually did, but in the end, this is the actual model that our virtual construction manager walked through with the client and showed them what we were proposing. Each room, again, I apologize, it's so dark, but each room has its own, kind of personalized touch, for that campus and for that university.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it was cool to see this, and I know I did see your other model that had the proper lighting that you're showing the client that you tuned up in the editor. Obviously, we can't tune up anything from the actual viewer, which is sometimes good if you're on site. You don't want to have to be playing with the lighting within the viewer. So this is kind of how you initially
I'm gonna get the editor open. Sorry, Mark, and I'm gonna show it to him real quick if I can find it.
Sure.
Just to show everybody what it is that I was tweaking with the lights and stuff. So real quick, if you make something a light fixture in like SketchUp or Revit or whatever it might be, you can bring stuff in here. And this is one of the things I really liked was, you click on a light and I can change the way it, how much it throws onto the wall. I can change the color of it, which I wasn't aware of, and we were just using it for cool renderings and stuff like that. And then when I found out about this, this made it even better.
Very cool. So Chad, can we? This is obviously probably a workflow a lot of people use. Utilizing SketchUp to quickly get their ideas into a model format that they can show to the client. Can you kind of talk about the project that we had worked on and kind of how we transitioned from utilizing Revizto as an easy visualization tool to actually utilizing it for project collaboration, clash detection, and kind of streamlining that workflow and helping to reduce some of the RFIs within current projects and future projects?
Yeah, sure. So after Mark and I had discussed all this, I had a project, and it's the new Red Wing Stadium. Again, I apologize, can't show it to you guys. I really wish I could because it's really cool. But One of the problems we were having out there was we weren't getting timely feedback from the design team for whatever reason. And instead of us just bombarding them with RFIs, I got to talking with Mark, and then, during other conversations, and he found out that I was frustrated with this, and he said, well, Chad, why don't you try this? Why don't we implement Revizto to try to expedite that? So we implemented Revizto and got everybody on board, so that as we're flying around the Navisworks model, for example, we can create issues in inside issue tracker in Navisworks, and then we can assign those responsibilities to someone that's on our team that we've invited. The cool thing is that I wanted a system that didn't require the architects and engineers to learn how to navigate and do all this stuff in Navisworks, but also didn't require the coordination team to necessarily get familiar with Revit. So the beauty of this is that Revizto kind of acts as the middleman. We work in the software that we're familiar with Navisworks. We create an issue, we assign it to somebody. The architect opens up his Revit model, and he's able to view those exact same issues in the exact same manner in his software that he's comfortable with. Do you have a example model that we can show, Mark, or do you want me to pull something? You want me to pull one up?
Yeah, Chad, if you go into the viewer, and if you want to open up any of those projects, I can jump into the same one, any of the sample projects that I've invited you to.
Okay.
And for anybody who might not be able to follow along what Chad was saying, the workflow, I did work with the different design people within the Red Wings hockey NHL stadium. In addition, I sent over a short video to Chad, and I think that might have been helpful too. So for anybody that wasn't necessarily following along with what Chad was saying, it's kind of a different topic or a different strategy just to talk about. And if we can't show you the exact workflow, I think there's about a 7 or 8 minute video on the exact workflow, and I believe it's called Reducing RFIs with Revizto, and you can find that on our Revizto YouTube channel.
And like I said, I really do apologize for not being able to show it to you. It's just, if I showed it to you, I'd probably get my hand slapped. So this is one of those sample models Mark was talking about. If we go down here, this is one of Mark's favorite ones to pull up. So, if I were to go in here and I was supposed to create an issue, for example, I'd take a snapshot of it. Let me get this out of the way. So I take a snapshot of it, and I said, and then I hit done. The beauty of this is that I can then open up this item and I can assign it to somebody. So, and then, Mark will get an email. I can assign, that I'm watching it, how many people have watched it, if there's any tags, you can call it HVAC. And all of these items are searchable. So if you ever wanted to go back and look at this later or find it later, you can see what I've done. I've entered these, and I can add whatever else I want to in here. And then all of this stuff is actually tracked, and you can see that we got an email. Mark, I think, replied to it. Yep. So it creates a conversation. It's not just, so one of the things that we were having trouble with is we were creating this weekly list, and we were creating it in a PDF, and it's not really trackable. There's no real way to make sure that somebody's actually doing what they're, looking at it, doing what they're supposed to be doing with a PDF. Everybody can say, well, I didn't receive it, it didn't come through, whatever it might be. In this situation, though, you can go down through this whole list of things, and you can see, the conversation when somebody looked at it, when Mark made a comment, all this kind of stuff. So that was the beauty of us being able to do this, and it got the architect, got the engineer engaged, and they were really working back and forth and talking to us about it. So, that's really where this became beneficial, is being able to actually track our issues. So, this wasn't a system to replace our RFI tracking by any means. This was a way to preemptively find out what issues might exist and how we might be able to address them. And then, who knows, a confirming RFI might have come out of this, or an RFI still might have been written, but at least we were getting ahead of the issues and we weren't just hitting them, when it's too late. We were trying to head off these issues way before they became, issues in the field.
Absolutely. And Chad, can you kind of, what were the challenges, I guess, we faced, and I guess more you faced in terms of, we had to get the architect and we had to get the different, project team members involved within this. Can you talk about, was that a challenge for you? Were they open to trying something new? And I think the reason this turned out to be successful is because, everybody committed to it at the end. But can you kind of briefly talk about the challenge, or if it was the challenge to get folks involved with the new software?
It was a slight challenge, let's put it that way. I like the team that I'm involved with out there at the project, so they were open to trying new things. They were hesitant because it was something new to them, obviously, and they didn't know anything about it. But I think once I explained it to them, once we had Mark sit on the phone and kind of walk them through it, I think they felt more comfortable and understood what we were trying to accomplish, because at the end of the day, they don't want to be sitting there shuffling through hundreds of RFIs. If we can use this kind of a system to show them where these issues are, and they can actually go into their own authoring software, which is in this case Revit, something they're comfortable with, and actually see the same stuff that we're seeing. Once we showed that to them, they were all on board and willing to go for it. The one hurdle I see with this, and it's going to be for any system, it's not just specifically Revizto, but if one cog in that wheel doesn't want to do this, the system's going to fall apart. So we really took it upon ourselves to really try to get them to embrace this, and they did. They wanted to use this. They were excited about it. We had guys using it 5 minutes after we got done showing them how to use it, so they were excited about it. Now the nice thing about it is one of my selling points to the architect was, it's really a pain for us to come up with these views and these issues and express them to you in a PDF, and then for you to have to go out and find where this actually is located in the building. So there's this button right here with a little pencil and ruler. If you click on that, even after you've chosen your view, it shows you where all these exist. It shows you where all these issues actually exist in the building. So for the architect, I showed this to him, and he was like, I'm in. I got it. This is perfect, because it helped so that he didn't have to spend hours going and finding out where all these issues actually resided on his floor plan, and trying to understand what we were looking at. He could just go straight to it and see it right away.
Awesome. And for those, I'm actually going to take over presenting ability. And if there's questions for Chad, or Don for that matter, after Don kind of shares their workflow, we're actually going to leave the last 10 or 15 minutes of this webinar for you guys to be able to answer questions, and for those attending, we'll be able to write in questions as well. I'm just going to show my screen real quick before I pass this over to Curtis. If I jump back over, and you guys can see my screen currently.
Yep.
If I was, we have our Revit model here. If I was the architect working on the NHL stadium, and I decide here's this issue we see that Chad wrote, the cool thing is the architect's in Revit, and Chad has spent most of his time within Navisworks. So the fact that they are talking in the same language, we can double click this, and it'll actually bring me to that location within the Revit model. So obviously we can see all of our notes pertaining to this. And when Chad was to jump into Navisworks, it would actually bring him over to that portion within the Navisworks model. So I think that was kind of cool to be able to talk in the same language, no matter if you were in Revizto or Navisworks or Revit or AutoCAD for that matter. Thanks for sharing that workflow, Chad. We really appreciate it. I think it helps everybody else attending to be able to kind of understand how that could be applied to a future or current project they're doing right now. So for the next 20 minutes here, I want to pass this over to my counterpart, Curtis Morgan. He's actually on site with Don, and they're going to discuss, it sounds like, getting virtual mockups and getting owners involved in kind of a different workflow. And I think this is kind of unique with Revizto is every person that I speak with uses it completely different. And that's kind of the beauty of how intuitive Revizto is that you can use it for coordination. As you saw, Chad was utilizing the Sketchup for winning jobs. And Don has been utilizing it to get owners involved, and I'm going to let him and Curtis chat about that currently. So Curtis, I'm going to pass the sticks over to you and Don right now.
All right, thank you, Mark.
You bet.
And we're going to pull up the screen here momentarily, but thank you guys again. Curtis Morgan here with Revizto, and I'm with my colleague Don Bokmiller of Robins Morton. And as we were talking about a few moments ago.
Hey, Curtis, before I don't want to stop you, but is there on my end right now? It's tough to hear you.
Okay, 1 second. How about that audio?
That's a little bit better, but it wasn't as clear as what it was when I was hearing Chad speak. Chad, are you hearing the same thing?
It sounds like he's a little bit distant, but I can hear him.
Okay. Yeah.
Give us 2 seconds. We'll try something else. Is that any better?
Yeah, it's a little better, and I'm sure you guys are in a conference room where you might have an external mic. It's better than what it was.
Okay. Well, so we'll go ahead and get started. I had an opportunity. I'm here on site with Don, and we had an opportunity to connect around Revizto maybe about a year or so ago, I would say. And we came in and showed the platform to Don and the VDC group here at Robins Morton. And since over the past year, connecting with Don here in North Carolina at various conferences, we've had an opportunity to kind of craft and carve out some really neat use cases around getting owners involved when leveraging the Revizto platform. And so that's kind of what Don's going to talk about briefly here this afternoon. So just to kind of get started, I'll pose this question to you, Don. You know, when using Revizto as part of your workflow, your software package, what do you see as advantages, particularly around when you're having your involvement with your owners and your clients?
For me, the biggest advantage, I kind of have to go back a little bit. So the first time that I saw Revizto was at RTC, and it was right at a time where, because of some work I had done with a previous colleague of mine, you know, I understood and recognized the benefit to easily navigate a model without having to do it in Revit or even, you know, in Navisworks. For the non-technical user, just for them to be able to, for lack of a better term, play it like a game, you know, just how powerful that was to instantly immerse someone in that type of environment. And so jumping off from there, I started looking at, how do we do that? And I got a particular gaming engine, and I had some training on how you get from Revit to that gaming engine. And then the first project that I did a virtual mockup on was all done in that kind of workflow. It was done in that environment. To do a typical patient room for that project took me about 2 weeks, from taking the model, doing a lot of post-processing after getting it in, and then just having to go through the whole cycle of going to Revit, making a change, exporting, importing, exporting, post-processing. It became very tedious. And so I say simple, You know, a typical patient room, like I said, you know, I was working on that for 2 weeks before it was to a point where I'd be willing to present it to the owner. Then I saw that, okay, Revizto, you know, I could go directly export from Revit and get to the game environment, so to speak. And so that, to me, was very appealing. And then when I found out how easy it was to do the post-processing required to make it presentable, then I was sold on it. You know, just it increased an already existing workflow. It increased the efficiency, you know, greatly. The thing about working for a contractor is that the models that I'm working with are not mine. I'm getting them from my architects and engineers. So to just spit it right out of Revit, most likely everything's great. You know, and I'm looking at drawings, construction documents, PDFs, whatever, that are saying, okay, the tile is this, and the carpet is that, and the door is this color, and has this kind of hardware and all that. And it's just so easy for me to apply that in the editor instead of having to make all those changes in Revit. So it's really, the advantage I see is how quickly I can get to what I need to get to. Now you'll see when I start showing some of these that, you know, from a high-end rendering quality, you know, beautiful display of the model, we can do that. But from a virtual mock-up standpoint, we're really interested in the functionality of the space, some of the look of it. So, you know, materials are important, but it's really more about putting the owner into their space and giving them a feel for it. So, of course, along with just looking at it on screen, we decided that, you know, the Oculus would be even more ideal. It would be kind of the next level. And we've been able to do that, and the ease of doing that with Revizto just made it so much more the platform that we would want to go to do that. So the story, well, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, so just make sure, can you guys see, Mark, can you guys see the screen, and we'll go ahead and get started?
Yeah, so we can see the screen right now. And if anybody has any questions as they continue, feel free to write them in the question section, and we'll address them in about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So the story behind this, just to take you through the workflow, was we were working on a 5-story tower, which was an addition to a hospital, and the project manager had asked the owner if they would like to see anything in particular, and the owner turned around and asked for some typical patient rooms. They wanted to see a NICU, a pediatric room, a postpartum room, and they were really hoping also to see one of their ORs that was being completely renovated. So I was able to easily, you know, kind of put that all together, and then we went down to present it to the owner, and as we were preparing for the meeting, it occurred to me that, you know, we should just show them the whole building. And so I was able to, again, because of how easy this software is to use and how functional it is, I was able to, while we're preparing for the meeting, just open up Revit, take the whole building, and spit it out into Revizto. Now, again, I didn't do a lot of post-processing. There wasn't a lot of material and stuff, but the key was to walk them through their spaces. So I'll just quickly show you kind of the patient rooms and kind of the same thing I showed the owner, and then kind of what their responses were and what benefit we got from it. And then I'll go over to the whole building, because that ended up being you know, the thing we spent the most time on. So this was one of their typical NICU patient rooms. I did apply some materials to it. I love the fact that I can apply images, you know, to make computer screens and things like that kind of come alive a little it gives it a little more realistic sense, you know, and plus, to be honest with you, in this kind of space, you know, how I can see the screens from wherever I am in the space is important. So we sat down with the chief nurse of the NICU department. We sat down with hospital administrative personnel, and we said, okay, this is going to be one of your new NICU patient rooms. And immediately they started, you know, raising questions. Is this monitor going to work in this location? You know, what about the furniture? Is that really the best spot for the patient board? And so honestly, it even turned into a little bit of a value engineering exercise. There were some items not shown in the architectural model that needed to be there, and there were some items that were shown that had to be removed. So just putting them inside the space as opposed to a 2D drawing, or you know, even looking at just 2D images on the screen was greatly beneficial. They got so much out of it that they actually called us back for a second meeting with a different round of personnel. So that's just one example of a mock-up. Now, my benefit, Robins and Morton's benefit for this, is to not have to spend the amount of time. I mean, this one took me about a day. So you have one person spending a day building a virtual mock-up versus a crew of 6, 8, 4, I don't know how many people spending a week or whatever to mock this up physically. Then you also have to get all the people who need to view the mock-up to the mock-up, and so there's time and money involved in all that stuff. You know, I could do this as a webinar. I could go visit the client. It's just one person traveling. It's a half-a-day meeting. So the cost savings on doing a mock-up virtually versus physically, if you can show the space well enough, the cost savings are huge. So I'll go ahead and just give you an example of some of the types of things that the owners noticed. So this is a typical pediatric suite, and one of the things was in the architectural model, you know, this sleeper sofa was kind of crammed in this alcove over here in the room, and so there was a lot of discussion about, is that going to work? Do the dimensions of the bed when it pulls out fit into that space? Is that ideal? They were really able to figure out if that's what they wanted for this kind of space. Another thing that was brought up was, you know, this is a pediatric suite, and depending on the age of the child, you're either going to have a bed in there or you're going to have a crib. Now, I'm jumping ahead, Curtis, you can smack me if this is a problem, but one of the questions that was going to come up was, what would we like to see Revizto, you know, improvements in the future? For me, in order to do this, I actually ended up having to make a separate model, one showing the bed, one showing the crib. If I could select an item, even here in the viewer, and just say, you know, turn off just that item, that would be great. The problem I'm still having is it's turning off that whole category. So, you know, and then also not even just turn off an item, but turn on an item that may not be showing by default. So anyway, that's just my kind of 2 cents on things I'd like to see in the future. What ended up happening was, you know, they said, no, we want to see it with the crib, but the bed would still be in there. So we ended up with this room, which I said, you know, okay, look at how crowded that is. I mean, you can't even get to your workstation, the IV monitor, you know, and it really helped them to understand, okay, our rooms are not that big, and we need to set them up appropriately. So there's another kind of a benefit that the owner got, was to see how much stuff can we really get in a room of the required equipment. The restrooms in these suites were set up very different from the way that their existing facility was set up. So they spent a lot of time wanting to know how this small space would actually function, and is it viable to do it this way? And of course, they ended up determining that it indeed was. Another very important thing, like I mentioned, was their OR. And what we actually did was the OR and the recovery room, since they were adjacent, I just made the model of both of those so that we could examine both of those spaces at the same time. So here's one of their operating rooms, which was fully renovated. And it was great because the chief surgical nurse, you know, when we first looked at it, this mechanical equipment, or this surgical equipment boom, was set up differently in the model, and this shelf was actually at the head of the bed. And she started saying how that's not going to work. We can't have that in that position. And so I was able to easily go into Revit, swing the arm around to show her that, hey, you know, this boom can be wherever you need to locate it. And she was able to grasp that very quickly. We didn't have to spend a lot of time with it. From another VE standpoint, for some reason in the model that I received, these monitors on the wall are there. And they said, well, you know, we're going to have these NICU, these giraffes in there all the time. Those monitors aren't really necessary. So they were able to value engineer out those monitors. Moving along outside of the, whoops, I went in the wrong door. By the way, I'm navigating with an Xbox controller, and to me that is like the greatest thing ever to be able to do that. I love my keyboard and mouse, but when it comes to navigating model, I'm a gamer, so this to me is a lot more familiar. So this is the adjacent recovery area, the post-op, and again, they wanted to see this to understand the space and how well it worked. How many beds can we get in there? Do we have an isolation unit that's functional? So to put them inside of this and to show them the things that they need for their hospital to function and how it was, what it was going to be like to be working there, and you know, your lines of sight and things like that, was very important to them. Which is why the overall building was the biggest hit with them, and it was the most most talked about model. So here it is. Here's the whole 5-story addition. Now this was a partnership with a local clinic that was going to move in to the ground floor of this, and so they. After we met with the nurses and doctors and the personnel, they said, let's have another meeting and let's bring the clinic folks in so that they can get an idea of what their clinic was going to be like. So just being able to take them in, walk them down a hallway, say, all right, if you're a patient, you're going to come in, you're going to go through some processing here, there's a waiting area, and then this is a typical kind of nurse's station with exam rooms or offices. So again, I didn't have to do a lot and pretty this up. They were more interested in where is this room in relationship to the nurse station, and what's my line of sight, you know, if I'm at the nurse's station, things like that. So just to walk them through this, and then they were wanting to know, okay, how do I get there from my office? And so, well, you got to come down this corridor, and I know this isn't terribly exciting to be walking down corridors, but this was to them. They were thrilled with this because it gave them a true feel of their space. And so now we're in the stairwell. We're going to move actually up to the actual hospital addition. And the first floor of this was the postpartum wing or area of the building. So when you come up the stairs or off the elevator, you know, you're meeting who you're supposed to meet, and then they were wanting to know, okay, what's it like to, you know, to move through the space? Well, for me to get from here to the newborn intensive care unit, you know, is a matter of coming down, going through secure doors, and then accessing that space, which you see through these windows here. So again, them having a feel for what it's like to move around inside of their building was incredibly huge to them. They would, you know, during the meetings, they would say, all right, you know, I'm at this space now, how do I get to the meds room, or how do I get to the pharmacy? And we could just walk them around, and they would get a feel for what it would take to actually do that. So that was, I mean, that's how we got the owner engaged and had good success with, you know, showing them their new space, got them excited about their new space, got the, you know, the hospital administration really to understand, hey, we've raised all this money to build this. What are we getting? You know, all that goes in with that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Don, for sharing that. You know, I'll add, as we were talking about a few moments ago about the different use cases that we've seen firms leverage Revizto at our core, being a collaborative platform and a communication platform. That's definitely what Don was able to share as they are communicating with their owners. So I definitely appreciate you sharing some of that with us. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Mark, but we do have a few minutes for Q&A for either Chad or Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I think this is it was really cool to see, and I like how you broke up the different rooms. And I think that's a common thing we see a lot is clients focusing on certain rooms and then actually showing the overall picture at the end of the day. So I thought that was cool how that came into play. So as Curtis said, I'd like to open up to questions for either Curtis, myself, Don, or Chad. I see that we got a couple in the queue already. A couple of them people telling us that they're going to download the product already right after this webinar. So thanks, Mike, for that. Let's see here. So if there's any questions, feel free to jump in there, and hopefully we'll have some answers for you. Okay, so the first one is from Paul. Paul said, is there a browser-only based version? So that's a Revizto question. I can handle that. We do have a browser-based version of Revizto. Usually I don't integrate that into the workflow that we saw today. I think it's good maybe to post on your website, or we've seen clients that have built apartment complexes, and the apartment will actually put it on there to have future renters be able to check it out really quick. But it's by no means as powerful as the Revizto viewer on your application, which you saw Don and Chad both demonstrate. So there is, but it certainly doesn't function the same way, and that's really the power and the intuitiveness of Revizto is all within that Revizto viewer. So hopefully that answers your question, Paul. And we're going to see if okay, so this one might be for Chad. The question is, construction teams with Navisworks and architects with Revit, does everybody have to have Revizto on their computers to coordinate? I mean, I can take that, or Chad. Actually, you know what? I'll just take that. The answer to that is the Revizto issue tracker, which you saw Chad write in, and I chat it back from Revit. That does need to be on the computer for you to collaborate that way. So if you're assigning something to somebody, or if you're jumping into Navisworks, the way it works is when we mark something up in Revizto, because it's coordinate-based, and as long as you're on the same coordinate system, if it's shared coordinates or 0, 0, as long as it's the same in Revizto, when we jump into Navisworks, we're just opening up the plugin of Revizto, double-clicking on that, which tells us what coordinates to view within Navisworks. So the short answer to that is yes, that the team does need to have Revizto. So the next question is what mobile platforms does Revizto work on? So that's a great question. People are asking about iPad service and does it work offline? So that's a great question. So Revizto works with pretty much any platform. So it works on a Mac, it works on PC, iPads as well. So Surface tablets. So if you're utilizing this, the functionality, which is cool about Revizto, is the exact same you saw. So if you're using the web application, if we open this up on the iPad, the functionality is the exact same. The buttons are in the exact same location, except for you're using your fingers to navigate instead of using a mouse or an Xbox controller in Don's case. And the second part of that question is it available offline? So the way Revizto functions is actually similar to how Dropbox. So you saw Don open up those files. Those are the ones he had locally. If Don was to share those to me and I don't have his NICU model on my computer, I would have to download it the first time. So any changes that he would make to that, I would have to download those changes. But if he hadn't done anything to the model, obviously I'd be able to open that up offline once I've initially opened it. So similar to downloading a Word document from Dropbox, you're obviously able to open that up when you don't have internet connection, and it's going to function the exact same. The other cool thing is if you're making comments or notes while in the field and you do not have internet connectivity, as soon as you come back in and you actually have connectivity, it'll push out all those markups issues, or anything that wasn't pushed to the cloud will push out as soon as you do have connectivity. Is the WebEx going to be available for us after the session? Yes, we are. We did record this WebEx, so you'll be able to find that on our YouTube channel. And that's another point. Our YouTube channel is awesome for seeing individual features. We have videos that are as short as 45 or 50 seconds that just show one feature if you forgot. There's also some tutorials that we put together in Camtasia for some of the workflows we discussed today. In addition, we have this webinar and some of our other global webinars where we've had clients showcasing how they've utilized it from CDs, DDs, coordination through construction are also on there. So the next question is, do you have plans to incorporate augmented reality, for example, taking an iPad down to site and using it to view purpose designs and even underground service superimposed on the existing site? So that's a great question, and the possibilities to Revizto, are obviously only limited by what our customers want. So that is something we've had conversations about. I don't know if there's an immediate design plan for that. It's definitely something we've discussed with different beacons, or I know some folks came up to us at AU with the Google Tango and how that kind of operates, and how you could basically use coordinate locations or the GPS to view areas within the model on an iPad. So just kind of an easy transition into augmented reality. I think those are all possibilities in the future of Revizto. It's just depending on what is what's important to the customer base we have. So those are the questions I got so far. Is there any other questions that I might have missed, or any other ones that people thought about in the meantime? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up. Any questions for Don or Chad while we still have them on the line? Most of these have been Revizto-oriented questions. So here's one that says, how does your licensing structure work? Do you have an enterprise setup? Yeah, so that's another great question. We do have an enterprise edition, so if you're looking at, and we do have several enterprise customers globally that have very large scale across multiple offices, across multiple countries. So yes, we do have an enterprise version if you're looking at some of the firms have a couple hundred offices globally. So obviously we have to be able to adapt and cover those folks. So yes, we do have an enterprise setup. And it looks like there's no more questions that came in. So I appreciate everybody for joining us today, and Don and for jumping on there, and Chad as well. If there's any other questions, obviously you're able to reach out to myself, Curtis, or anybody else on the Revizto team. And hopefully you guys will be excited about our next release 4.0, which is coming out in only a few weeks. So I know a lot of you guys are excited about that. And some of those improvements are including vector format 2D sheets, automation of the Revit and Navisworks model being launched, and exporting that into Revizto, a new markup tool, and easier coordination between subs and project team members. So those are just a couple of the things. We also have some additional features you're going to have to wait and see in 4.0. So if there's no more questions, I appreciate everybody jumping on here, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.